Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, fueling philanthropic programs and dedicated to creating educational and professional opportunities for Alaska Native people.
The National Weather Service.
Good Friday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on this 8th of April. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information at weather.gov/Alaska or call us on the weather info line at 800-472-0391. During the week and in between Alaska weather shows, you can find more information from your National Weather Service at NWS Alaska on Facebook, NWS Alaska on Twitter, or you can use the local office names in Fairbanks, Anchorage, or Juneau. Just put NWS in front of that and find us on Twitter that way, or look for AKwx. In the afternoon, you'll get your daily afternoon map briefings on the NWS Anchorage and Alaska channels there, and you can also search for AKwx TV on YouTube in the evening after this. If you missed the broadcast a little bit, or if you want to review another section, perhaps you want to watch aviation one more time, you can certainly do that from our broadcast partner here at Alaska Public Media. You can watch the entire show if you miss a little bit there. It works pretty well on your mobile device as well. Low bandwidth solutions there on YouTube. It'll help you get the show where you need it and when you need it, any time of the day. Here's a look at what's going on up across the North Slope. As always, with this type of weather pattern, we get the opportunity for blowing and drifting snow and poor visibility. All of these regions here are under a winter weather advisory. Some of those will continue through tonight, and many of those will continue into tomorrow, maybe even Sunday morning, all due to the gusty winds blowing in from the east up to 40 miles per hour in some cases, and the poor visibility. In some cases, it could be near blizzard conditions there. So blowing and drifting snow, but not necessarily a whole lot of additional snow falling. So look for that very poor visibility possibility there. If you've got plans that mean you're going to be moving out and around the village, even if it's just a little ways, make sure you tell someone where you're going. Make sure you've got a plan to get there in case something doesn't work. You've got a backup plan, and make sure someone's checking to make sure that you actually arrived, and just have a little bit of a plan there. It's a good way to keep you and your family and your community safe. And again, a winter weather advisory in all of these yellow shaded areas across the North Slope from Point Hope to Kaktovik and into the northeastern slopes of the Brooks Range will continue for a good part of the weekend and could be extended. In the meantime, we're looking a little bit more towards summer, and on the way over to Alaska Public Media this afternoon, I saw a few gulls. Now, if you're in the Anchorage area, you know what that means. Summer is here. Now we're just waiting for tour buses, right? And of course the tourists. A breakup map for April 6th with the new update coming shows a little bit of a change there. Some open water in the upper Tanana Valley, just east of the Fairbanks area. So we're watching for some changes to start moving downstream eventually. But right now, most rivers are listed as ice. And as we get into next week, we will have the Alaska Pacific River forecaster and a hydrologist here on the show talking to us a little bit more about what we should expect in the coming weeks for breakup around Alaska. And that will include some looks at the flooding potential like we did last year, and perhaps a little bit more of an expert opinion for breakup around the 49th state. So make sure, if you don't do anything else next week and you don't watch Alaska Weather all next week, make sure you watch on Wednesday evening there, because again, the Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center hydrologist will be in the studio with us live. Here's a look at what's going on around Alaska now on the satellite view. This is starting around 7 o'clock in the morning, and what do you know? The weather pattern has changed very, very little since I last spoke to you, and really since yesterday when Mike spoke to you. Notice that we've got moisture moving northward across the North Slope. We still have our persistent area of low pressure here. That means the jet stream is well south of Alaska, and that is just allowing these systems to sit here and spin and throw moisture up. But across South Central and Kodiak Island, you are in the warmer and wetter receiving end of this, and that means as we go into the weekend, as conditions are already warming up well to our south, and that process is moving further and further north in latitude, a lot of this air is a lot warmer than it was about a month ago. and this has a lot more moisture with it. So as it works northward, we're going to be watching for the potential for several inches of rain around Kodiak Island and the Prince William Sound side and the Kenai Mountains and the wetter side of the eastern Kenai Peninsula, maybe as far south as Homer. I'm going to be watching for some changes there. So if you're heading southward or are along the northern Gulf Coast or Kodiak Island, plan for kind of a wetter weekend there. It's already starting up. For southeast, you can see hit and miss clouds. There were some pockets of rainfall today. Petersburg picked up about a quarter inch. Yakutat saw more than an inch of precipitation today. Now looking northward, not as much. Now many other locations are still dealing with the substantial snowpack. Bettles has about 30 inches or so. I believe Valdez has a similar amount there, maybe closer to 40. Anchorage today was considerably warmer than most other places. We saw a high of 54 in town. That compares with the coldest place today. You can guess, probably on the North Slope. It was 0 in Akasuk earlier this morning. So a lot of cold air still hovering up north, and with the wind and poor visibility, it doesn't sound like a beautiful day, but any day in Alaska is better than anywhere else. Here's a look at low pressure across the eastern Aleutians now at 976 millibars. This is the guiding force for that southerly flow working up across the north and western Gulf. Now you can see wet weather around Whittier earlier today, Kodiak Island around Cold Bay, and eastward, a little bit better chance for rainfall there, closer to the triple point. That is where the cold air and the warm air and the occlusion all kind of meet up together. Notice there's some areas of light snow up across the upper Yukon Valley and the middle Yukon Valley there around Bettles and westward toward Ambler, a little bit drier. Some areas of snow around Kotzebue Sound and just northwest around the Chukchi Seacoast, some light snow and blowing snow as well. And again, a little bit of light rainfall across southeast. As we get into tonight though, remember that triple point we were talking about? Here it is, and it actually gets a little bit of an added punch with a stronger circulation. Low pressure there focuses along that point and really enhances the lift and the availability of that moisture to rain down on places like Kodiak and the eastern Kenai Peninsula and into Prince William Sound. Meanwhile, high pressure sitting just west of Haida Gwaii at 1,022 millibars. Some areas of light rainfall there and into Yakutat. Of course, when we say light rainfall, that probably means only 1 inch rather than 3. Now out around Nunivak Island and the Pribilof, so an included front will have passed you by, and that's going to allow slightly warmer air, a little bit better mixed air to move into your region. It still could mean rain and snow showers for your area and a better chance for stronger winds on the northern side, and that means a better chance for blowing snow from St. Lawrence Island to the Bering Strait coast all the way up to the Chukchi Sea and the Beaufort Sea coast. As we get into tomorrow, that trend should continue, not as much falling snow as blowing snow for the North Slope. Low pressure will continue to fan out and mix up across the Yukon-Kuskokwim coastline. A 990 millibar low there around Amonic and northward into the Norton Sound area and around the eastern chain. On Alaska and Dutch Harbor, the low pressure system should be right over you at 983 millibars. That keeps all of the northern and western Gulf in that steady flow of southerly wind and again keeps up that opportunity for persistent moderate, maybe even heavy rainfall for Kodiak Island and Homer and Seward and Prince William Sound. Now Cook Inlet will see clouds, no question about it, but a lot of this is going to be shielding the Anchorage area and the Matanuska and Susitna valleys from some of that healthier rainfall. As it crosses over the mountains, we're going to leave a lot of that rainfall on the eastern side. Nothing unusual about that at all. But as you're looking there, notice that there is kind of a hole in that precipitation. Out across southeast, high pressure is still just barely in charge. You'll get more clouds than rainfall, but watch out for some showers to develop in the afternoon. And as you get into the afternoon on Sunday, a better chance for some of that moisture to start creeping in from the north as high pressure drops to the south and the overall flow starts to fan out a little bit more across the north and eastern Gulf. Now there's another wave of low pressure and moisture out across the western and southern Gulf. We'll see that creep northward as we get into Monday. We'll keep our chance for rain going across Kodiak and southwest. And look at the snow showers across Kotzebue Sound and Norton Sound. Rain and snow showers, including areas around Nome for the end of the weekend. And our friends on the North Slope for Barrow and Prudhoe Bay all the way out toward Kaktovik. It still looks like we're going to see that healthy easterly flow that will probably be gusty at times. It'll keep it cold, and that's going to keep visibility down, but not a whole lot of new snow in that area. Look further westward toward the Pribilofs. Snow will be in the vicinity there. Watch for some of that to produce some low clouds as well, so low clouds and flurries and maybe some snow showers through St. Lawrence Island included in that as well. And rain and snow showers continue for the Aleutians as we wrap up the weekend. Temperature-wise today, fairly mild day in southeast, upper 40s to lower 50s from Petersburg to Wrangell to Juneau and Haines and Skagway 48 there in Yakutat today. Sitka was close to 47. Haida Gwaii also just shy of 50. Around Prince William Sound, lower 40s to upper 40s there. Valdez was at 43 degrees, again with snowfall intact, 50 degrees. And Anchorage by 4 o'clock earlier in the day we made it to 54. 45 up around Squintina, and temperatures there in the Susitna Valley fairly mild. Glen Allen 43, 52 in Northway, 38 in Fairbanks, and Eagle saw 33 degrees. 30 in Fort Yukon. It was 27 for Arctic Village and only in the teens there for Anaktuvuk Pass. Single digits for most parts of the Chukchi Coast. Barrow near 9, Kaktovik at 17. Kotzebue Sound was in the teens and 20s with Nome at 41 today. Galena saw 38. McGrath was 46, Bethel 46 degrees. The Bristol Bay region in the lower to mid 40s. Cold Bay and False Pass saw temperatures in the lower 40s there, 43 in Sandpoint, and Dutch Harbor in Unalaska was 41 with the Pribilovs in the upper 30s by late afternoon. For South Central tonight, most areas will stay above freezing. Southeast looking to be in the mid to upper 30s. The interior in the middle Tanana Valley close to 30 but below freezing, 13 in Fort Yukon, 2 below in Barrow, and 24 in Nome, with Southwest looking at temps in the low to mid 30s. The Alaska Peninsula above freezing. Kodiak Island 41, St. Paul 34, with Dutch Harbor and Unalaska back in the low 40s tomorrow afternoon. Sandpoint closer to the mid 40s. Same goes for Kodiak Island. Lower 50s for Southeast. South Central close to 50 degrees, but remember there's clouds and rain with that as well. Prince William Sound and the eastern Kenai Peninsula will be colder, including Seward. Close to 50 in Fairbanks. Looks like a mild day for you tomorrow. At Fort Yukon and the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range in the mid to upper 30s. Anaktuvuk Pass 27 and 6 in Barrow, with Nome looking at temps at 37. Bethel and Southwest in the mid 40s tomorrow afternoon for your Saturday. Flying weather shows a heaping handful of IFR for the western parts of Prince William Sound and the eastern coastline of Kodiak Island, as well as parts of the western Alaska Range. You'll also see MVFR north of the Yukon in the morning, and IFR conditions, of course, for the Arctic coast. As we get into the afternoon, some of that will shift around, but don't look for a whole lot of changes in those regions with winter weather advisories. And again, that's most of the coast. Prince William Sound and the eastern Kenai Peninsula still looking at IFR conditions. Some of that will kind of drop southward a little bit across the western Alaska Range. But notice again, that doesn't creep up the Cook Inlet area at all. Out across the west, hit and miss MVFR and IFR conditions. Here's your pass conditions now. Anaktuvuk and Adigan Pass, we expect to see MVFR through most of the day. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass are likely going to stay IFR or very close to it through most of the daytime tomorrow, so pick a pass that goes north. Rainy Pass, IFR conditions there with MVFR developing in the afternoon. Windy Pass looks to be VFR through most of your Saturday. Oop, there I am. MVFR conditions there for Isabel Pass and Mentasta Pass. Visual flight roll expected through most of the day. Tanita Pass also expecting to be VFR. And for Portage Pass, IFR conditions there should be most of your Saturday. Chilkoot and White Pass we're going to call VFR through all of Saturday. Freezing levels show that warm and wet air is really most concentrated down across southern parts of Southeast, but it is expanding across the Gulf and starting to send more moisture up the YK coastline. As a result of that, of course, the surface freezing line there is also jogging northward with low pressure sitting across the Alaska Peninsula and guiding that warm and wet air northward. So you wouldn't be surprised then to see the icing chart look like this. Above 8,000 feet, though, we see a much better chance for occasional moderate. We will have an opportunity for icing a little bit around more places across Cook Inlet and southward out into the Gulf and across the Alaska Peninsula. There's an added bonus there across the Seward Peninsula and Norton Sound, generally above 3,000 feet, and west of the Pribilovs above 4. Our jet stream shows a ridge of high pressure just surging northward toward the Chukchi coast, with wind speeds out across the North Pacific at 140 to as high as 190 knots. This is guiding a lot of moisture and a lot of storm energy, but it's well south of Alaska right now. So we get that stronger southerly flow, and that again will continue to push warm air further and further north. At 9,000 feet, you can see that southerly wind working across the Gulf between 35 and 40 knots. It slows down considerably when it makes it to the Yukon and continues to slow down as it works toward the north coast, anywhere from 15 to 25 knots. Southeasterlies west of Nunivak Island, 30 to 40, and northerlies really pick up on the backside of that low pressure system up to 65 knots as soon as it gets south of the region. For southeast, southerlies fan out a little bit more to the southeast at 3,000 feet, 15 to 20 knots there. Southerlies a little bit stronger over Kodiak Island, southwest, and Norton Sound. As they make that turn, though, winds die off considerably over Nome, 15 knots there from the east, and for the central and western Aleutians, 10 to as high as 25 knots. The north slope looking at winds from the south and east at 30 to 40. Turbulence then will focus on areas around Prince William Sound and the Chugach and Kenai Mountains over the Kodiak Island region, southwest, and the Kilbucks and St. Lawrence Island, generally below 4 to about 6,000 feet and below 4,000 feet for the eastern chain and the Alaska Peninsula. Watch for some chop there on the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range and near the summits and over Kotzebue Sound for Red Dog Mine, Kotzebue, and maybe as far west as Shishmaref at times, but focusing a little bit further out to the east for your Saturday. That's a look at your aviation forecast. I'll be back with a look at the sea ice edge and your marine weather for the weekend coming up.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of Alaska Public Media and the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation, welcome to Hangar Flying. Tonight we welcome back Steve Perot. Steve, as I pointed out in our last session, is an experienced manned and unmanned aircraft pilot. And it's nice to have a bridge like this with someone as talented as Steve to talk about the issues that face both communities. Talked a little bit last time about kind of the history, and it's not a very long history, but going back maybe 10 years or so, and the changes that have really occurred most recently. But tonight I want to talk about something that Steve and the Safety Foundation have worked on that'll be of particular interest to you all in the audience. Steve, welcome back.
Hi, how you doing, Harry?
So let's talk about a document that, and you did the lion's share of the work on it, and some of your colleagues in the lower 48. But it started out as a helicopter safety advisory document, and we've named it Remotely Piloted Aircraft Systems Guidelines. Would you talk a little bit about what that document is, we hope that document will do?
Yeah, so back in 2013, 2014, around then, we recognized that there was a wide range of professionalism and understanding of how aircraft operate in the airspace, and a lot of the unmanned operators didn't quite have the same safety culture that we do in the manned world. Some of them did very well, but we felt that there was a need, particularly for companies hiring UAV operators, to have a set of guidelines to help them sort of vet the operations, and also for the operators to start to understand what we do in the manned world in order to stay safe and work safely with other aircraft in the same airspace. So a friend of mine, Todd Chase, led the development of the document that was adopted later by the Helicopter Safety Advisory Committee. And then, as you know, recently the Alaska Division of Economic Development and the Small UAS Interest Group, or excuse me, Alaska UAS Interest Group, saw the need for a set of safety guidelines. So Todd Chase, that I mentioned, gave us permission to adapt the HSAC document for that purpose. So it's very much the same document with some wording changes, and in a couple of cases maybe a little less stringent on some of the requirements.
So let me summarize a little bit for our audience, because I think this is it's a really great opportunity for the Safety Foundation to, rather than stand on the sidelines and hope this works out, to take a very active role in the safe integration of UAS. And so for the folks out in the audience, it's similar to an ops spec maybe. It's similar to an ops manual if you've been involved in commercial operations. But it's an opportunity, and ladies and gentlemen, this is the document here. This is a paper copy. We're not going to distribute this, but we're going to put this on our website. Just to repeat that website, it's www.aasfonline.org. And we should have it up by the time when you check it. And I would, if you're operating a UAV, or if you're interested in how UAVs are operated, I would ask you to take a look at it, because the Safety Foundation wants to play the role, and Steve, and with the help of his friend Todd and Rob and some folks, Lockheed and other folks, have helped put this together. We just simply adopted it, but I'd recommend that you take a look at it. Steve, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for the role you've played. This is kind of exciting, and I appreciate the fact that you've kind of agreed to be a volunteer for the Safety Foundation, make sure it stays current. We've got about a minute and a half left. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, you know, I think it's really key. I fly, you fly, my son flies, real manned airplanes, and I also promote drones and feel that the UAV industry is important. For us to all operate safely in the same airspace, we all need to play by the same rules and operate to the same standards of professionalism and safety. And I think if that document is sort of meant to enable that kind of activity.
Great. So ladies and gentlemen, when you're on the website looking at this new document, if you're not a member or you haven't renewed this year, there's an opportunity, there's an application there. Remember that we do what we do in the Safety Foundation only through your support. We're 100% funded by member dues, and you can go online and renew your membership and help us do things like this, like the scholarships that we provide, hangar flying twice a week, the safety seminars that we have. In fact, we've got our annual seaplane seminar coming up on April the 16th, and we are going to really try to figure out a way to beam this out to Fairbanks and Juneau and some of the communities in the bush. So more to follow on that. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed our program. Steve, thanks for being on the program.
Thanks for having me, Harry.
And thanks for helping with this project.
Happy to.
Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, fly safe.
Thanks, Harry. We'll see you again on Monday. Today's Sea Ice Edge shows that the main concentration of the ice pack is fanning out a little bit more out across the central Bering Sea. Here's St. Paul and the Pribilofs for a point of reference, but you'll notice the lower concentration ice and more open water is forming on the coastline of the YK Delta and inside of Norton Sound. And our sea ice experts tell us that if you do have plans to go out on the ice, make sure you know what kind of ice you're getting out on before you go, especially in the Norton Sound coast, because conditions are changing there all the way around the Seward Peninsula and eastern Norton Sound. And there is open water developing and increasing right now in this weather pattern. So again, be extra careful and cautious if you're going out on the ice as we head out into the weekend. Weather.gov/anchorage/ice.php has this type of map, as well as a map that shows you the concentration and the forecast over the next couple days. Make sure you use those tools for your own safety and check that early and often. It's updated every day. Saturday's marine forecast shows north and westerly winds coming down the central and southern inner channels. Winds will be fairly light, about 10 to 15 in southeast through most of your Saturday. 3 to as high as 6-foot seas in the inner channels there. Better chance to see 7 to 8-foot seas across the outer coast with that south and easterly flow. That's a little bit stronger north of Cross Sound and in toward Yakutat and Icy Cape. We get 25-knot wind there from the southeast with an 8-foot sea. For Sunday, winds diminish a little bit along the outer coast in the north, down to 20 knots there with an 11 to 12-foot sea. Winds continue from the south across the central and northern inner channels, about 10 knots with a 2-foot sea. Look for a northwesterly flow inside of Clarence Strait, though, with a 4-foot sea on Sunday. For south central, southeasterly winds across the north and western Gulf, 30 to 35 inside of Prince William Sound, and easterly flow at 30 knots with a 7-foot sea. Northeasterlies coming down Cook Inlet, 25 to 35 with seas as high as 9 feet south of Cowgan Island, west of the Barrens up to 12 feet, and easterlies inside of Shelikof Strait, 25 knots with a 7-foot sea. For Sunday, winds diminish inside of Shelikof Strait, becoming southerly at 15 knots. Northeasterlies coming down Cook Inlet, only 15 to 20. The sea's still holding around 4 to 5 feet. Easterlies inside of Prince William Sound, 25 knots with a 6-foot sea, and 15 to about 30 knots with 30 knots there outside of Hitchinbrook entrance and across the northern parts of the Gulf. You could see as high as 12-foot seas there going into Sunday. Across the Alaska Peninsula, look for 25-knot winds from the east and southeast. Inside of Bristol Bay, northeasterlies at 10 knots with a 2-foot sea, and southerlies about 25 knots or so from Castle Cape to Chignik with 11-foot seas there on Sunday. Not a whole lot of a change there, 20 knots there from the south, with southerlies picking up inside of Bristol Bay, 25 knots with a 2-foot sea, and south and westerlies a little bit further down the coast at 20 knots with a 5-foot sea on Sunday afternoon. For the Aleutians, northerlies remain light from Kiska to Attu, 15 knots. Look for northwesterlies crossing the central and eastern chain, 30 knots, 11 to 12 foot seas there, and 10 to 13 foot seas on the Pacific side, with a southwesterly flow from Nikolsky to Unalaska, 20 to 30 knots. And then as we get into Sunday, winds diminish in most areas or hold close to the same, 15 to 25 in most areas, with 7 to 9 foot seas across the Bering and the Pacific coast side. Winds remain fairly light from Kiska to Attu at 15 knots with an 8-foot sea on Sunday. Across the west coast, northeasterlies are still crossing the ice around St. Lawrence Island at 30 knots out toward St. Matthew. Easterlies north of Nunivak Island, but remember there's starting to be more and more open water here, so keep your eye on that. Outside of the Kuskokwim, 15 knots with a 4-foot sea. The Pribilov's looking at 20-knot winds blowing from the east. That becomes southerly on Sunday. Southeasterlies move outside of the Kuskokwim Delta at 25 with a 6-foot sea, and easterlies from Hooper Bay and Macquarie all the way toward St. Lawrence Island and west toward St. Matthew, all around 20 knots on Sunday. For the North Slope, easterlies are going to stay up all weekend long. Remember, that's going to have impacts on your visibility and ability to travel in some cases, so be extra careful and be prepared for near blizzard conditions in many cases. That could last from tonight all the way into Sunday morning, so watch for changes there and stay up to date on the weather. 30 to 35 knots in most areas across the North Slope, outside of Kotzebue Sound and off Cape Lisburne a little bit lower at 20 to 25. As we get into Sunday, a broad easterly flow continues to sweep across the coastal plain and the Brooks Range as well as the coastline, 25 to 35, all areas from the east on Sunday. Recapping tonight's weather, winter weather advisories continue for the north. Look for blowing and drifting snow. Not a whole lot of additional snow except for some areas across the eastern Brooks Range. Looking further south, it's going to be a wet weekend for the north and western Gulf Coast communities, as well as Kodiak Island, Homer, and Seward, as well as those in Prince William Sound and southwest. Periods of heavy rain will focus on the Gulf. It could be several inches of rain as we get out of the weekend. Southeast gradually sees more clouds and a better chance of persistent wet weather as we get into Sunday. And watch for rain and snow showers across the west coast and the Aleutians, as well as the Pribilovs going into Sunday, with a continued threat for blowing snow in the north. Thanks for watching.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.